Attention, attention. There is a Patreon giveaway thanks to a current patron. They agreed to give up one of their very nice knives in a raffle for new patrons. So if you've been convicted, you've listened for a while, you think you want to become a patron of Gunfighter Life or the Alpha Male podcast, perhaps this will be that push you've been looking for. It is a K-Bar Folding Hunter. Now, K-Bar is a good knife company, and I don't think I have to explain that if you're into this kind of stuff. K-Bar is a legendary knife company. This is a very good knife that looks very suitable for EDC. Now, I don't know how big you think this group is, but I have less than a dozen patrons at the time of this recording, and that's total. So who knows how many will join this month. So I'd say if you want to join, your chances are probably pretty good. I made a post on Patreon. You can go to the Patreon page without being a patron. Some stuff is just for patrons. In fact, most stuff is just for patrons. But there's a few videos on there you can watch that are just for the public, for everybody. And I did a post for the public, for everybody. So if you want to go see the details or see a picture of this knife, go over to Patreon. It is the main source of income for this podcast. This will be for the month of November in the year of our Lord, 2022. What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way with Judeo-Christian values and real-world first-hand experience. As always, I am your host, Michael Melito. First and foremost, a servant of God, a follower of Jesus Christ. That is number one in everything that I do, and this podcast is no different. Also, a veteran of both the Marine Corps and the Army. Been to war a few times. Also served LAPD. Been a professional big game hunter and guide and a lot of other things. But first and foremost, I am a Christian. Anyway, today is a mobile episode as my wife and I just got done taking a short road trip to Yellowstone. And as such, I'll be doing this on the iPhone and uploading it. So if you've listened for long enough, I appreciate that, to remember the old days of when I would record on the iPhone and upload it. But today I think is going to be a fun episode for a lot of people. Underrated or underappreciated guns and gun combos. The first one I am going to talk about, I recently recommended to somebody, and they didn't take the recommendation, which is fine. They went another route, which for them was cheaper, which I appreciate. They modified a gun they already had instead of going out and buying another gun. But severely underrated is the Savage Axis rifle. They are a couple of $100, maybe a few $100 with inflation. They are, every one I've ever had, I should say, was ridiculously accurate. And you can get these anything from 223 to 308. I would imagine 30-06, 270. So all the popular calibers, at least the most popular calibers. And you can kill anything in North America for a couple of $100. They come in stainless steel. They have good triggers out of the box. They have the ability to mount good modern optics, and some of them even come with optics as your standard 3 to 9. And you're talking, again, a few $100. Just the accuracy, the versatility, the dependability. I think Savages as a whole are underrated, but I think the Savage Axis is very underrated and underappreciated. Even if you have a really nice hunting rifle like this gentleman did that just had an issue that's several $1,000s, sometimes you don't want to take a several $1,000 rifle like that into the woods. Maybe I'm going reconnoitering, walking on some lava rock, or I'm in the Pacific Northwest where it's going to be disgustingly muddy and nasty, and I'm just taking the rifle out just in case I see a coyote or something like that. For that, I might want that, basic, dependable, stainless steel or whatever rifle. A rifle I can take out and get a couple of cans of spray paint and Krylon it and make it look all Boba Fetted out. And I don't care, because next year if it gets scratched up or beat up, I'll do it again. And as long as I take care of the crown and don't drop it on the optic, I'm good to go. And there's time and places for those kind of rifles. Or perhaps you're trying to have somebody else and bring them hunting, and you're just going to loan them the rifle. And it's the kind of buddy, we all probably know friends like this that just don't take care of stuff. And if they leave it in their truck and it gets rusty, you're not going to have a heart attack. So I think there's a time and a place for a rifle like this, or if it's your first rifle or you're saving up to get a rifle. Again, a rifle like this in .270 or 30-06 will pretty much kill anything that you want it to. If you're up to the task, the rifle will be up to the task. And I think they're very underappreciated. Okay, so the next underappreciated one we're going to talk about is an older one. And it's the Remington 760. The Remington 760, if you're not aware, is a pump-action rifle. I think pump-action rifles as a whole are vastly underappreciated, especially as much as people today are looking at the lever actions again. And as good and as fast as the lever actions are, they're not as fast as the pump action, and they're a lot more complex and in my experience, have a lot more moving parts. The Remington 760 is a good rifle. It's a lot of times very accurate because it essentially has a free-floated barrel. That forend doesn't really touch the barrel, so they can be very accurate. They're very fast, and they came in a lot of popular calibers. 30-06 is probably the most common, but one of my favorites, if I was going to get one, it came out in .280. In fact, I think the .280, which is very underappreciated in and of itself, originally came out, if I'm not mistaken, in the pump-action rifle. I'm not sure about that, so verify it for yourself. But talk about a good combo. The .280 might be America's best all-around hunting cartridge. It is phenomenal. It's essentially a 7mm without having the Magnum title that's very capable of almost any game. And having that in a quick, handy pump-action rifle that you can take anything from, 0 to 350 meters, 350 yards. And again, since they're not really appreciated, I saw several gun shows, the last gun show I went to, for short money, a few $100s. And the older Remingtons, before they went bankrupt, or I guess should say before they went bankrupt this last time, because they've been bankrupt before, the quality on those is amazing. The bluing is good, the quality of steel is fantastic, the wood is nice, and just a part of Americana from a time when, a working man went hunting and put food on the table, and to be able to still hunt with a piece of Americana like that is pretty awesome. And since they're not appreciated as much as like a pre-64 Winchester Model 70, which is going to command a high premium, these are an awesome, awesome rifle. And there may come a time where they are really appreciated more than they are now. So if that's a gun that's not on your radar and you just want a handy woods gun, a handy gun for putting food on the table, it's called the 760 Game Master. And I think it's a pretty apt name for that rifle. The next one to mention, moving over to the shotgun world, people are super familiar with the Remington 870, the Mossberg 500, and they are often very familiar with Benelli semi-automatics, the M1, the M4, the Super Black Eagle, and things like that. But Benelli has, for a long time, I remember one of my best friend at the time had one in high school. So they've been around at least 20 years. And that's the Benelli Nova and Supernova. It's their pump action. And I still think you get that awesome Benelli barrel quality, fine craftsmanship. They're a good quality implement. And I don't know why they're not nearly as popular as the 870 and the 500, especially since, let's be honest, the 870s, in my opinion, in the last couple of years really suck. They're really subpar and kind of ashamed to wear the Remington name, I think. So, I think for that, reason, the Benellis really should be up there. I think they should have taken the place of, let's say, the 870 a long time ago. I've never heard any issues of them being unreliable or having issues. And again, they have that Benelli quality. They're just a great pump-action shotgun, unlike most Benellis, they're not $1,500. They're very affordable. They make hunting models. They make tactical models. I believe the actions on them are very smooth. And again, I don't know why they're not as popular as the Remington or the Mossbergs, or even as the Benelli semi-autos, because a lot of people, again, know and have and are familiar with Benelli semi-autos, but they're not as familiar with the Benelli Nova and Supernovas. They are great shotguns. They are, I think, very price appropriate and a good value. They're not dirt cheap, they're not the made in Turkey $100 shotgun you can find at Walmart, but they are a nice shotgun with, I think, that same Benelli quality. And for all the reasons I like shotguns and their versatility, and as good as the pump action is for a good, reliable, reasonable rate of fire firearm, I think there should be a place, and I think a lot more people should gravitate towards those Benellis than actually do. Yeah, and again, I think the Benelli Novas and Supernovas are just very underappreciated guns. Okay, so another unappreciated or underappreciated gun, I think, that aren't being made anymore. They're a little bit older, but there's still plenty of them around, is the H&R NEF Handi rifle. These are really cool guns, and they weren't expensive when they first came out, and they're still not expensive. Again, if you go to any gun store that has a lot of used guns or a gun show, these came in all kinds of calibers. I just saw one at a gun show in .22 Hornet, and I thought, what a cool little gun. Now, I didn't buy it because I was actually at that gun show to sell guns to help raise capital for the podcast and other things, but what a cool little gun, and for a couple of $100. And .22 Hornet's a cool caliber in and of itself. It would be a cool combo. But I think what might be the most fun and most practical and underrated is that H&R NEF Handi rifle in .357 Magnum. You can shoot .357 Magnum, and that's a capable round out of a handgun, so it's only going to gain velocity out of a rifle. So it's certainly a capable medium-sized game gun out to reasonable distances, let's say 125 yards, which, let's be honest, east of the Mississippi is where the vast majority of deer are taken. To be a great deer hog-killing machine, it's inherently very safe because it's a single-shot break open, plus they have an exposed hammer, so if you're taking a young shooter or a new shooter, you can just look over and glance over and tell them, or and see rather, if that gun is in action, let's say, or not. Whatever the condition might be of that gun, it's very easy, even from a distance, to tell. And you could tell that young man, if it's their first hunt or whatever, young lady, hey, keep the action open, and when you see game, as you throw it up to your shoulder, snap it closed. That way there's no real way, or I shouldn't say that, there's a far less chance of having any kind of safety issue because that gun is actually broken open. So they're good for that. Since it's .357 Magnum, it'll also shoot .38 Special, which is affordable to shoot. It's even more affordable if you reload and cast your own lead. It's one of the cheapest centerfire rounds you could reload for, and it's just a lot of fun and capable, and I think they're very underrated. It would be a great starter gun. It would be a great learning gun. Assuming it had good iron sights, it would be a good gun to teach new shooters on, and maybe a good first deer rifle. Probably better than an AR, which a lot of people start their kids on, probably because that's what they have, or they want an excuse to build another AR for their kids. But I think this is a far more practical, affordable, and underappreciated option, is that NEF H&R Handi rifle. And they made them in all different calibers. But if I had to pick one, the .357 .38 Special is a pretty cool, again, an underappreciated combo. Alright, this next one, I've noticed, and I'm happy about this, in the last, let's say, 5 years or so, the double stack 1911s have really gained a lot more of a foothold than they ever had. They were, for a long time, mostly, and there were some exceptions, me being one, only used for competition. I used one for duty use, but most people saw them strictly as a competition gun. now they have quickly gained ground in the last 5 years, which I don't know why, because they've been around for probably 20 or more years. But double-stack 1911s are now seen as a viable duty gun, and a lot of agencies authorize them. And everybody's familiar with the STIs, now Staccato. I shouldn't say everybody, but most people that are familiar with double-stack 1911s are familiar with those. Springfield just came out with one of them. And if you've listened, you know I'm not a big fan of Springfield. I'm also not a big fan of buying something the first 3 years that it's out. But there's a forgotten one, because sadly it got bought by Remington, and they kind of ran it into the ground, and then they stopped making them. But Para Ordnance, for a long time, was kind of one of the standards. It was STI and Para Ordnance. Para Ordnances, unlike the STI, they don't have a modular frame. They're all metal frame, but they are a good gun, and they were big in the competition circuit for a long, long time. They were one of the front runners, which means they hold up to a heavy round count, and they have to be reliable. You know, that's one thing that'll ruin your day in a competition, is having malfunctions, because that eats up your time, and time kills your score in competition. So they are rugged, they are reliable, they go for thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds. They're dependable. And the Para Ordnances, I think they're very underappreciated. You can a lot of times get them for not a lot of money. They are a really good, solid gun. The very original ones, I believe, were made in Canada. And then after that, I don't know if it was Canadian gun laws or whatever, they just got bought out. They came to America, and for a long time were made here. Any of those were good, I'd say, up until Remington bought them. I'm not sure about the ones after Remington bought them, but they quickly went under and weren't produced anymore, which tells me after that they had issues. Whatever those issues are, I don't know. But if you can find a good old just Para Ordnance, they're awesome guns. They made them in 9mm, they made them in 40s real common, they made them in 45. I believe the double stack 45 holds 14 rounds, which is about double what a regular GI 1911 holds. And they're just a great gun, and again, very underrated. One caveat, a reason I never bought one, you have to have, I think, for them to fit your hand well, I'd say larger than average hands. So beware of that. But assuming that's you, they are a fantastic option. The Para Ordnance double stack 1911s. In fact, check this for yourself, but I think they may have been the very first double stack 1911. And next, I realize we have not talked about revolvers yet. A lot of people are familiar with the big names in revolvers. Smith & Wesson, they're familiar with Colt. They may even be familiar with Taurus revolvers. But there is a good American-made company that doesn't get a lot of love, and that is Charter Arms. Charter Arms, probably their most famous is the Bulldog, which is a small concealable 44 special handgun. But Charter Arms is an American-made company. They make a lot of really light 38 special guns if you're in the market for one of those. Smith & Wesson obviously is the standard. I don't think there's any arguing on that. But you might want to look at Charter Arms. They are a good, viable option. I believe they have a good warranty. Check that for yourself. But I think they're a good, viable, and very underappreciated option if you're going for... I think they make them in 22, they make them in the most common 38 special, and they make them in, obviously, their famous 44 special. And they're just really cool guns. And that same footprint as the Smith & Wesson J-frame. But, again, very underrated. So if you're looking at one of those kind of guns, maybe, even if you don't buy one, at least consider the Charter Arms. I think they're a good gun. I want to say thanks for listening. Back in, I would say the studio, but I don't really have a studio. I normally record on my weight rack. But you can probably tell a difference in the audio quality versus the car episodes. If you appreciate that, I hope you consider becoming a patron. So hopefully the podcast continues to improve. If you don't know, that's how I originally did the podcast, was just in my vehicle, usually on my way to work or to the range or whatever. So if you appreciate the better audio, I'd appreciate you becoming a patron. With that, I'm going to talk about the tactical tip of the day. If you have a sling for a rifle, a good thing you can do is get it piece of duct tape or electrical tape and wrap it around the end of that sling if it has those buckles or adjustable pieces, so that it doesn't loosen more and more and more and then fall off, and then your rifle goes falling off your shoulder because the sling broke. I've had a sling break and my rifle fall off my shoulder. If you have one, you can wrap a piece of electrical tape or duct tape around the very end of it so that it can't go through the buckle and come undone. You can also make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to grab and adjust the length. Anyway, that's your tactical tip of the day, the tactical verse of the day. For by you I can run against a troop, by my God I can leap over a wall. You'll find that in 2 Samuel 22.